We are so punctual. Have you noticed how punctual we are?
It must be our Britishness. Maybe that's what it is. That's the punctual part of us.
I don't know, but I do like people who are on time. Actually, I'm annoying because I can be early sometimes, which is irritating for people, and I have to sort of wait, and anyway, I digress. How are you today, James?
Very good. I thought I'd kind of dress down today because I'm a little bit demob happy, because this is going to be we're going to take a break from the show for a couple of weeks. We're going on vacations and other things that are kind of happening as well. So how are you feeling? Are you looking forward to having a couple of weeks not having to hear my voice?
I will miss you, of course, James. Well, then again, I might not. I am looking forward to catching up on my sleep. Eating too much, I've been doing that for a year and a half. Drinking too much, I've been doing that for a year and a half. But no, spending some quality time with my man where we are both not attached to our work, where we can just take a break from it. No screen time for 2 weeks will be incredible. I don't think I'll manage 2 weeks, but I'm going to try at least 1 week of no screen time.
Beautiful. Well, if someone's watching this for the very first time, my name is James Taylor. I'm a keynote speaker on creativity, innovation, and artificial intelligence. And
I'm Maria Franzoni, and I do everything else. So I'm founder of Speaking Business Academy, a former International Speaker Bureau owner, and I hope you know me by now. And if you're not connected to me on LinkedIn, please connect. I do like to be connected.
Absolutely.
Right.
So we have a fabulous guest today. So in a few moments, we're going to welcome onto the stage Mary Tillson. Mary Tillson is head of speaker coaching and momentum at Speaking Business Academy. In that role, she helps speakers develop their content and messaging, as well as maximize their personal impact and delivery style. This means that as a speaker, you remain relevant, memorable, and make it easy for audiences to be able to listen to and understand you. 3 essentials for getting booked to speak again and again. Mary co-facilitates many of the Speaking Business Academy workshops with Maria and is lead tutor on content-specific workshops. Additionally, she supports speakers in delivering more than just a speech, so they can build on the momentum achieved from their speeches. You see, many clients today are looking for a return on their investment from a speaker. Clients want the learning from your speech embedded back within their business to bring about the behavioral change that they seek. Please welcome onto the stage, Mary Tillson.
Hello. Wow. I am feeling very humbled by that introduction. Thank you, James. We need you. My laurels. I'm just going to rest on my laurels.
No, we need you to live up to that now.
I know the pressure is on me.
No pressure. And obviously, I know you very well, Mary, but there'll be a lot of people who don't, and they won't know that you are absolutely passionate about this strange thing called scoping. In fact, you're so passionate. If somebody talks to you about it, you say it 3 times, not once. Explain why you're passionate about it. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yes, happy to. I think I'd probably drive you mad because I'm always going scoping. And you're quite right, 3 times. For me, gosh, I could go on for hours on this topic, but in a nutshell, for me, if we get scoping right, if we do proper scoping, what it enables you, speaker, me, whoever, to do is gather what I would call robust data. That's my key word here, from which you can develop a robust solution. And that solution, to pick up on something that James said, if anybody was listening to the introduction, that is one of those incredibly important essentials for a speaker. The content that you then develop will be relevant. So that is my core passion for it. And I have often been set up to fail because somebody hasn't scoped well for me. And so I have been left guessing what I'm meant to be doing. So for me, and if you want me to carry on yakking, shall I carry on yakking a little bit more?
Carry on. Yeah, absolutely.
For me, please do shut me up because I am passionate on this one. For me, what I also, why I love it so much is because I have so often sat and listened to speakers and sat amongst the audience. That's my passion as well. It's the audience that I'm passionate about. And so often, sadly, I hear the audience saying, well, what was that all about? How does that affect me? The so what element is missing. So for me, what scoping does, and if you do it well, and I know we'll explore that as we progress in our conversation today, good old Stephen Covey habit. I'm a fan of his habits. Seek first to understand. This is such a key habit that any speaker should really begin to nail, because too many speakers, too many people, too many trainers, coaches, speakers often default to what I call GI, giving information, giving information, giving information. They talk at the potential client. They tell the client what they're going to do, but they haven't actually sat back and asked some fantastic questions. Done well, if we get the scoping done well, and I'm happy to share how you do it well, what it does as well is it ensures, with the technique I share, that all the stakeholders are set up for success. Because when you're scoping properly, you don't just consider the audience, you consider everybody who might be impacted or can influence that event you're doing. So it could be HR, it could be CEO, it could be audience, it could be the booker, it could be the venue. You give thought to all those. And I think, for me, very personally, when I have scoped thoroughly, I actually come away confident, feeling really good that I can then go on. I've got enough information, or enough robust information from every angle, that I can develop a really great solution, whatever it be, that really, really makes a difference. It takes guesswork away. And what it does do, and I think for me, again, I know Maria knows I'm passionate about this, a word I use, is it really means that whenever I develop the content, or I help a speaker develop their content material, they know what they're trying to land as a result of their content. So I'm going to stop now. I could go on for hours. Does that give you an answer?
Yeah, it's wonderful, Mary. And I'm going to make a comment before I hand over to James for a question. But I'm always surprised at how little time is spent on scoping by anybody, whether it's a speaker or a trainer, anybody who is dealing with a client. They've got a prospect or a client in front of them, and they don't go deep enough. And I'm always surprised by that. James, what did you want to ask Mary?
Well, so I'm going to be very selfish here, Mary, as I'm listening to this. So I'm going to speak from the speaker's perspective here. So one of the things that you talk about is how scoping can actually help you beat your competition. And as speakers, we can be competitive lots. So can you elaborate for that? How can scoping help us beat our competition?
Very happy to. I guess I'm not a psychologist. I'm an amateur psychologist, but psychology comes into play here. Okay. Seek first to understand is your Stephen Covey habit. No ways about that. Okay, so that's coming back into the fold again. I touched on some behaviors, GI. Well, actually, there's some other behaviors which are really useful. Okay, and I'm just going to share this with you, because then that will answer your question. If we learn to seek more information, if we learn to test our understanding of that information, and then we summarize back to the client what we have heard and our understanding, instead of simply just giving them information, telling them what we're going to do. What you are doing behaviorally is you are demonstrating, and that's an incredibly key word, you are demonstrating to your client, the booker, whomever, that you are listening. You are demonstrating that you're listening. And when you demonstrate listening, the psychological impact of that is that you are sending an incredibly powerful signal to the other person that you genuinely care about them. Now, when that happens, I don't know anybody on the planet who doesn't respond well to feeling that somebody genuinely cares about what they need, what they want. And that, again, the psychological process is that their natural instinctive confidence in you begins to quietly increase. Listening is the most brilliant tool for any number of situations, but it's a brilliant one for speaking and scoping. And then what also happens, and I'm happy to share some examples, perhaps further on in the chat, the trust begins to naturally form because of this genuine intent to understand. And what always, I don't know if you can relate to this, but I mean, oftentimes I found myself, you sometimes have to ring up the gas board or the sea board or the electricity, some supplier somewhere, and you get passed from political posts, and then you get people ask you don't ask any questions, they just sort of ramble on at you. And then somewhere in that organization, you finally get hold of somebody who starts to ask you some really great questions. And I don't know if you've ever done this, but I sat there and quietly thought, hallelujah, I finally found somebody who understands. Now, they haven't told me anything. They haven't given me an answer. but just the sheer power of somebody asking brilliant questions really instills that confidence. So for me, how does it fight off the competition? I mean, just as an example, sort of no names mentioned, but there was a client, I had never, ever met them before. I was actually stepping on behalf of another speaker who had enlisted my help to ask, to get involved with something, because they had asked for something that he wasn't comfortable with. So I got involved in the scoping. I said, please let me do the scoping for you. Now, the point is, for me, they had never, ever, ever met me. They didn't know me from Adam. They knew him very, very well. But I set about scoping. I asked the questions. I used the tools that I will share with you. And as a result of that, never having met me, we won a huge slice of work. They'd never met me, but we won this huge piece of work, which in fact was handed over to the speaker. My perspective, if you think about the whole psychology, is why would they bother going to anybody else? Who's got time to go searching for somebody else if you've got in front of you somebody who clearly really wants to nail it for you, and he clearly has got some talent, because they wouldn't have approached in the first place? Why would they?
It reminds me about something you're saying there. I was talking to a client last week, and it was their kind of the top sales executives within this particular client. And they used a phrase, and I love this phrase. I've been using it all the time because I just think it's such a great, and it kind of relates to what you're talking about. She said, they were saying that when they're going up against, and they're selling multi-million-dollar things. I won't say what the company is, but these are big deals. And they said one of the things that's drilled into all of their salespeople is, show me that you know me. Show me that you know me.
Nice.
Always getting across to the client that you're curious, like you mentioned about questions, asking questions as well. That you've done the research already, so you've asked a lot of the questions yourself even before you jump on that call with them as well. So that show me that you know me, I think is such a really powerful. So I'm interested to know, when you do those scoping calls, is there one question that you ask of that prospective client or that client, the one that they say, oh, I've never been asked that, I've never kind of thought about that? Is there one of those kind of questions that they have to really pause and think about?
I could give you dozens of questions, James. Okay, I guess sort of one that would come to mind for me, and this in fact is actually the one that I've just alluded to, that client that we want a big piece of work with, is when I've asked lots of questions, what I call them some of the more basic questions, and I got a really good feel for them. I simply said to them, what is your appetite for doing something completely different?
Oh, that's a good one.
It had never occurred to them to think out of the box. But as I was asking all my questions, because I suppose my experience, I had developed and designed shed loads of programs and so on and so forth, I could visualize something much bigger than that original just a speech. I know we're not onto just a speech.
No, but do you know what I like about that question? It does two things. It does open it up, but it also, from a sales psychology standpoint, it's almost like, as me as a speaker, I would go at the start of a speech, and you might say something like, there's two types of people in the world. There's open-minded people, and then there's closed-minded people. There's open-minded people that are willing to adopt and think about new ideas and question. And then there's closed-up ideas people who are, just not really interested in what's going to be happening next and where the industry is going. But hopefully you're on the right side. And I'm doing two things. I'm kind of using sales psychology. I'm also using body language, which is a right, left. Hopefully you're on that. So what you did there as well, by using that phrase, are you, in terms of attitude to risk, opening up, you're also setting up for yourself. And I guess if you're maybe presenting 2 or 3 different artists, two or three different speakers, that third speaker who's maybe a little bit more left of field, but you feel, I think this client should take a chance on this because I think there's something here. So you're getting them to open up to that possibility.
Yeah, and because one of the things around the whole scoping is it really gets them thinking. They start thinking about things, because the number of times that people come to you and say, well, I want something on leadership, and they don't really know what they want on leadership. But when you start exploring deeper and deeper and deeper, they suddenly realize what they hadn't thought about. You get them really thinking, and you provide sort of almost healthy challenge. Not in a controversial way, but just by asking some really great questions and just digging a little bit deeper.
Brilliant, brilliant. Before I ask you my next question, I just want to say hello to Tom Morley and Ty Grady. Tom is saying that this is very well timed. I have a gig coming up where they've asked if I can simply add in writing a company anthem. 200 people, 45 minutes. I will be scoping what they really want on this call this afternoon. Great.
Oh, well done, Tom.
And and he also says, show me that you know me. I'll be using that. I'll be using that
Yeah,
too.
me too. I think we're all going to steal that, James.
Yeah. Good morning to
You're right,
Ty. And Tom has added again, Tom's involved in the show today. Thank you, Tom. He's saying appetite is such a neutral word while also being a call to adventure. Clever. Let's talk a bit further about this appetite thing, Mary. You mentioned...
Sorry, Marie, the connection disappeared then. Just sorry, I lost, it all disappeared.
You lost me. So I want to carry on about the topic of appetite. You mentioned appetite. To do a bit more. Clients sometimes want more than just a speech, don't they? And you mentioned that, you alluded to that. Talk to me about how scoping can help you in that respect. Yeah,
for sure. And in fact, James mentioned it kind of in that introduction. More and more, and I know you've seen this, guys, clients want more return on their investment. They're looking for embedding. They want more. And I think the important thing is there's nothing wrong with a speech. Okay, there's nothing wrong with the speech. If that is all that any speaker ever does, that's fantastic. But what scoping does is open up the opportunity to do more than that potentially, which two things. One is it earns you more money, which is obviously great, but also it really gives your client a much deeper, more long-lasting kind of solution and gets them thinking deeper. So for me, how does it kind of work? I think there are three things, first of all, any speaker should have in their back pocket, okay, before you even go near scoping. One is, you can remember this one, the Ebbinghaus begetting curve. I'm sure some of you have heard about it, or have you forgotten all about it? But the bottom line is, within about an hour of learning something, the research says that we will have forgotten 55% of what we've heard. Now, why should a client spend gazillions of pounds on a speaker to know that within an hour, 55% is gone, is forgotten? And in the back of my head, that's always worth considering, because I actually will happily share that with a client as part of my kind of scoping. The other thing as well, and I don't know how many of our listeners are familiar with, it's fairly common parlay now, that the whole 70-20-10 approach to learning and development. 10% comes through like formal learning, which is a speech or workshop, and only 10%. Okay, that's the truth of it. No matter how brilliant the workshop or the speaker is, 20% will come from that kind of social interaction, that coaching, that one-to-one, that kind of time spent watching somebody, observing somebody. Can you show me how? Kind of WhatsApp group stuff. And 70% of the real learning, where the learning happens, and when learning happens, that's when the behavioral change happens, comes from that whole application of the learning, and then assignments, projects, and so on and so forth. And the third thing that I think you should always have in your back pocket, which helps them consider more than just a speech, is for everybody, every speaker, to think about what are the different ways you potentially could deliver your expertise. As it happens, I mean, a lot of speakers will come to me and ask me to help them because I can take their speech and turn it into a workshop or a whole year's program if they hadn't sort of figured that out for themselves. Because many speakers don't know that they can do more. But the key thing as well is that the clients often don't know that a speaker can do more. So when I say more than just a speech, only 10% will come from a speech. So when you're scoping, at 10% of learning, so when you are scoping, I would inject quietly into that conversation, what are your thoughts about embedding the learning? Because we know stats say that within an hour, 55% is gone. And I would, I really want you to get that return on your investment. Can we explore ways that we potentially could embed the learning beyond the work, beyond today? What is your appetite, that key word again, for allowing me to make the speech more interactive, so it's more workshop based, those kind of things. So there's any amount of opportunity if you have a clear understanding in your head before you go into a scoping conversation of what's possible, and open the client's eyes to what's possible that they may not have even considered. And at the end of the day, if it's just a speech, fantastic. No problems with just a speech, but you can do more. Sorry, Marie. Sorry, no, brilliant. James, you've had experience actually that the market is asking for more. You personally, haven't you?
Yeah, what you're saying there, Mary, really resonates, because I always got a little bit frustrated sometimes working with clients when it was the call would come in and it would be, we're looking for a motivational speaker. It might start there. Then you get on the call and you scope, you do what you're talking about there, and you can really see there's a deeper thing there, and really, because what you're trying to go from, not necessarily what do they think they want, but actually what could they really use? What is actually going to be useful to them? It's going to make an impact from a longer term perspective. And then so in the past, you would kind of set these out. Listen, can do the speech here. That's great. That's tip of the spear. Gets everyone kind of about the vision, about the idea, the concept. But as you were saying, that 2010 rule, then you've got to then kind of embed that. So I'm suggesting maybe what we do is we do a workshop series. I know some people like to learn in smaller bite-sized chunks. So we actually have an accompanying online course that goes with this for those that prefer to learn that way. And then we have some other things that we can do if people are more experiential learners. So we kind of like, you build those out. And in the past, it's been like talking to a brick wall sometimes, because in the conversation, you might only be having a conversation with the person that owns the event. It was difficult to get the learning and development or the HR people in. But now what's quite nice about certainly a lot of events I'm doing is that you're having those conversations where not just the C-suite person or the VP or the owner of the event, but also the HR, the L&D person's coming in, people, the team are coming in there. So you can have a much broader discussion. And the person I think is also doing this well. I know you've worked with Tatiana from London Speaker Bureau. What's nice about, I'm seeing what someone like a Tatiana, what their team are doing is they're now going and working with clients. Like, no, rather than just get speakers from us, let's talk strategically. What are your strategic objectives over the next year to 3 years? What are the key things? What are the gaps skills gaps in the organization? And then you cascade it down. And speakers, we are one part of that, but we're just one part. There's facilitators, there's lots of other people as well. So hallelujah. Finally, this stuff's getting to happen, because it's definitely happening. And maybe the whole pandemic is just kind of fast forwarded this conversation now, because we have to do some of this stuff because we're talking about distributed people now, not necessarily in the same room.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of those questions that you've sort of commented that around strategic, what's going on strategically would be one of the questions that I would ask in the scoping. But a couple of thoughts came to mind for me as well, which might be helpful. Is I often say to a client, no one has ever had a problem with this ever. I have said to that potential client, are you happy for me to play devil's advocate here? I have never had a problem. And people say, yeah, sure. I said, just because I'm really keen, and if you sell the benefit, because I'm really keen to make sure we land this. So if I provide healthy challenge, do you have an issue with that? No one has ever said they have a problem with that. And that gives you that opportunity to dig a bit deeper. The other thought as well, just pinged into my mind as you said that, there is one of my favorite words in the English language, apart from yes, to most things. And this is a brilliant word, and I would encourage every speaker to put it in their toolkit, is the simple word specific. Could you be more specific? Yeah. Because that is like a laser beam. And what it does is even the sort of the frontline booker who perhaps hasn't got much knowledge, could you help me be more specific? What specifically are you looking for? And what that does is really begin to force the thinking. And I use that word a lot to dig a bit deeper, because then, and as you were saying, James, what you were talking about then, which I hadn't particularly gone on to talk about, because more than just a speech, there is a huge potential for a whole blended program. I mean, I can take a 1 hour speech, and I have done it for a speaker before now, and turned it into a year-long program. Which involves, as you say, all those elements of that 70-20-10. So I think I probably.
So I'm going to use this back at you, Mary. I'm going to use this back at. Is there a specific tool or technique that you recommend when it comes to thinking about scoping?
Oh, great segue. You should be on the television, James.
You should be a professional.
You should be professional. That's such a good segue. Thank you. Guys, there is. I don't invent these tools. I'm very lucky to be somebody who learns them on the way. And this is a multifunctional tool that comes from the stable of a company called Kepner and Fury. And it is, as I understand, famously linked to Apollo 13's Houston, We Got a Problem, because Kepner and Fury are a problem-solving solution company. They have a whole range of tools. And one of them is something called critical questions. I use this faithfully every time I scope. It's a simple tool. I say it's simple. It has a few elements to it, and I'll give you a bit of a headline here. If you want to know more, kind of find me after today, guys. But there are essentially two parts of the process. First of all, what you do initially is you do what I would call you diverge your thinking with a client. You go big, okay? You go big, and you ask the various questions, and then you'll end up, and I'll share those in a moment. And you end up with quite a lot of information, okay? I mean, I have sat with a client and filled a wall in those lovely days when you could be in their office with paper and human beings, with flip chart paper, and we have just brain dumped on paper. What you then do is have a long, hard look at this, and then you, what we call converge it down into something. Now, I'm not going to go into detail in the process. Talk to me beyond today if anybody wants to find out more. I will do that. But essentially, the 4 headline questions, okay, the core questions, and underneath that, there are a myriad, a lot of other questions, but the 4 main questions. And I actually always say to the client, I'd like to use a tool called critical questions to help me really get under the skin of what you're looking for. It will help me develop a great answer for your solution for you. Are you happy if I get on that route? Always say yes. They always say yeah. So the first question, the first headline question is, Mr. Client, what results are you looking to achieve? You've asked for something on leadership or innovation or resilience, whatever that headline theme is. What results are you looking to achieve? There are any number of questions underneath that. For example, can you help me understand specifically, that lovely word again, why you need it? What are the drivers that sit behind that request? So you're beginning to dig a bit deeper. Now, I spend all day giving the questions, but that's just a flavor of those questions. The next question, the next headline question, which always causes every client to think they never thought about this. Mr. Client, you want something on leadership, you want me to deliver something on leadership or innovation or whatever it is. What risks do we have to avoid? So by whatever I'm doing. So it could be, for example, are there any other business initiatives taking place that I need to be mindful of, that I don't then, crash into as a result of whatever I might do? Because that's not a question many people think to ask. And, those of us, if you've been in business, most of you have, there's always so much going on in a business, and they've got their global teams and they've got their Europe, EMEA teams, and you need to make sure that you're not clashing. The third main question is, sometimes people get a bit struggle with this one, but when you explain it, what symptoms are you looking to remove? So, for example, if you, I guess there's only a number of questions there, but, what issues or concerns or behavioral things are going on currently in your business that you want to actually eradicate, take away? What's the pain point? And actually quite a useful one there when we think about the whole speaking topic is, have you had a speaker on this before? Were there any issues or comments or thoughts around how they delivered it that I need to be mindful of? And then the fourth one, the fourth headline question, under which there are gazillions of questions, is all around what logistics and resources do we have to consider? Excuse me. So that's a whole load of stuff around number of people, their background, the hierarchy, room layout, because sometimes not knowing the room layout can really catch you unawares if you've got the wrong room layout. And then also what's going on in the business. What I would then be finding out, what are your company values, what other events are going on, but you're digging deeper into that one. So there are
that discussion is
hundreds of questions I can share with you.
But it's interesting, those questions. So the immediate thing I'm thinking about here, and I'm just taking the perspective of the speaker, is sometimes when you have those conversations, the people you're having the conversations don't know. They really don't know. They're not at a level in the organization. And it's almost like a little bit different if I was a consultant for McKinsey or a consultant for Boston Consulting Group. I think one of them, I think it's Boston Consulting, no, McKinsey, I think maybe it is, only ever deals with the C-suite. the top level, because they feel that when they ask questions, they're not going to be able to get the answers they need and then kind of get the buy-in. So they only ever deal with the top level in an organization. And that's a strategic decision that they made, while other consultants will work from the bottom and then gradually try to get up as high as they possibly can in the organization. So I'm guessing that's the one thing, as I'm hearing those, I'm like, I would love to ask those questions to some people and some of my clients, but sometimes you're just talking with an event organizer who doesn't have they just don't know. The client has never told them because they're not doing what you're doing, which is scoping properly.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, for me, the simple answer for that is, control the controllables. I'm full of one-liners. Okay. For me, I would actually be saying to them, I absolutely understand that, when it's apparent that they don't have that information, and which is happening a lot. But I have always said, is there somebody in the organization that you can let me talk to? Is there somebody that I can go talk to? And you know what? They may well be able to find somebody, because they hadn't thought about the questions I've asked them. They suddenly realize how important it is to understand that information. They're realizing how little they know. And so again, they have, I'm not always, but they have come back in the past. And if they haven't come back in the past, and you end up having the most barest minimum of information to work with, well, I know every speaker that's listening to this will be brilliant and will do a great job. It's just frustrating that we can't do an even better job, but it is control the controllables, for sure.
Fabulous. I'm going to just check in we've got some more comments. So we've got Shakil A. Chauhan. I hope I've pronounced that right, Shakil, and please forgive me if I have not. I've always spoken about embedding the learning by offering further workshops and training so that their initial investment isn't wasted. The clients love it and the invoice is bigger. Tom Morley has, in quotes, said, your initial investment isn't wasted. Genius. So Tom's got great value out of this session. He's got the questions he needs to ask. He's got a couple of great quotes. So Tom, the invoice will be in the post. Mary,
I like a drum solo, please, Tom.
Oh yeah, drum solo would be nice. Yeah. So Mary, I know that there are lots and lots of examples where quality scoping has led to more business. Could you share one of them with us?
Yeah, happy to. For example, so a client approached us, and they, not me personally for doing it, but they approached us, the bureau, and they wanted a speaker on innovation. Now, innovation is a big topic, as I'm sure everybody who knows anything understands. So I got a hold of the client and I scoped with them, and I worked my way through all those questions. Now, they initially had come to us because they wanted a speaker on innovation. In their head, they were looking for a speech. But I asked a lot of questions, because also, I know that innovation doesn't happen overnight. You can teach people the tools of innovation, but just teaching them doesn't make people innovative. It just gives them the tools. And so when I had asked all these questions, so again, part of that process is asking all those questions, results to achieve, risks, symptoms, logistics. I then sat back, and the other part of that process, which I'll just touch on lightly, is you then look at all that, all the information that the customer's given you, and then you look for what are called common threads. Now, what was coming through to me very strongly from this client was that they wanted to create a culture of innovation. They didn't just want it to be the preserve of the R&D team. Well, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that a speech is not going to create a culture. So I, again, basically in my sort of summary with them, and then ultimately became the proposal, I said, what is your appetite? Let's look at the budget for doing more than just delivering a speech, because I think there's a huge opportunity here that we really can embed this, but we need to do a wee bit more than just a speech. So as a result of all that scoping, and they literally came in for just a speech, a whole blended program was then created. So we had the speech to front load it, but it was a workshop. Speech was in fact converted to a workshop. And then we added in coaching, we added in project teams, because we wanted people to go back into the workplace and explore the ideas they created in the workshop, And then also, most innovations, which I knew, never land because they don't present them well enough. They're not influential in how they land or present to the CEO or whomever. So I knew that there was an opportunity here to then build in some presentation skills training as well. And then actually to bring it to real fruition, we put in a piece at the end where they actually, once they used the tools of innovation, had the skills of how to present and land their sell, their idea, they then had to present all their ideas live to the executive board. And then underpinning all that, we put in a sort of like a champions program where we could actually use their internal resources to then cascade some of the learning and the theory throughout the business, because it was a big business, it was global, and they'd never been able to afford for this program to go globally, but we set them up that they could deliver it internally. So that's an example, and it started as, I say, just a speech in the mind of the client. But when I pulled out, this sustainability needed to sustain culture, they began to realize, golly, there's an opportunity here to do way more than we thought.
Fabulous. And it was a huge success. So wonderful. Brilliant. Fantastic.
So that's the tip to any speakers listening, because I know this, and some very successful speakers have told me this as well. If you want to add some zeros to your overall average deal size with a client, add that phrase, how to do a culture of something, because the culture moves it one level. You're almost immediately talking to more senior people in the organization when you're talking about culture. Fantastic. Mary, if people want to work with you and to get help with them on their scoping and their content creation, what's the best way for them to be able to do that?
I think just probably the LinkedIn phase. If you see my name on the screen here, I mean, I haven't been married that long, so I spent forever being Mary Tillson, but that is my married name, and that is also the name that's on my LinkedIn profile. So hook up with me on there, just reach out to me, and I am going on holiday for a fortnight, so I might not be jumping onto it straight away, but I will absolutely reach out to you, and then if need be, we can just tee up a one-to-one, and I will scope with you what your needs are.
Scope your scoping.
And I'd be very happy to help.
Fabulous. James, we love to share top tips, and so
yes,
we ask our guests if they have top tips.
Yeah.
Mary, do you have a top tip, and do you have a gadget you'd like to share with us?
You're the gadget queen, Maria. My top tip. I'm always known as one-line Mary, one-liner. I am full of one-liners, mantras. Okay, so for me, first of all, I would encourage anybody to find their mantra. Now, I have mantras that kind of rule my life all the way through, and then I might have what I call seasonal mantras if something's happening in my life. But I have two mantras that I use all the time, okay, which is one of my top tips. So the top tip is the mantra, but I'll share mine with you. Set up for success. So often we get set up for failure. So if you have a set up for success mantra, that means that every piece of work I do, whenever I'm working with any speaker or a client, I'm always thinking, am I setting them up for success? It guides my thinking. And as Maria knows, I can hear another pound going into the pot.
I've got a pound machine, so I put money in every time she says this. I'm going to buy myself a Tesla.
And what is it? Can you remember?
Begin with the end in mind. You pinched that from somebody, though, didn't you?
Yeah. And I am not a gadget queen. You can probably see I'm not surrounded by green screens and everything else as well. I leave all that to Maria and James, but I never go anywhere without my flip chart pens. That is my gadget. I never go anywhere without my flip chart pens.
Fabulous. And James, I think you've got a tool you're going to share with us, which is going to blow Mary's mind because it is a gadget. Would you like to?
Yeah. So just before we were talking, Mary and I were talking about a speaker that I'm a big fan of, who's recently passed away, unfortunately, Edward de Bono. And I know Mary's worked with Edward when he was alive as well. So I remember seeing Edward when I was about. Oh, and Maria, you've all worked with him.
I booked him. Yeah, I booked him.
You booked him, and so the thing I was really impressed with when I saw Edward de Bono before is he wasn't a flashy. He definitely, if he was still alive, he wouldn't be using green screens now, I'm sure. But his ideas were really, they had dynamite to them. They're really breathtaking ideas. And he was a very intelligent man, but he managed to compress these ideas down to knowing that stories will make people listen, but visuals make people remember. So what he used to do is he used to use, and this is like in the 80s, 90s, acetates. If anyone remembers those, everyone was at school in those kind of times. And I wanted to try and figure out a way of doing a kind of de Bono thing, especially more of my workshops, less so the keynotes. And so I invested in another little iPad, and one of these is an Apple Pen. And what this is really fun, it means that when I'm doing my presentations now, and I get to a point in the presentation where I want to usually kind of talk about maybe kind of some concept, it allows me to just kind of very quickly to get a little bit creative with it and to start drawing and to kind of explain that thing and to point to that and to talk about that thing. And if I make it's not particularly attractive the way I'm doing this just now, but it gets people kind of sucked in. It's still a little bit kind of different, but if I do it well and I explain something well and I do some kind of nice visual representation of my concept or my idea, then people are more likely to remember that than if I show a stat, or even sometimes if I tell a story. I think sometimes visuals just kind of put themselves into the brain. So I'm having a lot of fun with my Apple Pen, and I'm just doing a very basic version for you just now, but sometimes when I do it, I'll actually have my presentation, my PowerPoint behind me, and I'm almost kind of annotating my presentation as I go on. So that's my little tool of the week. And the tool that I use for this, just to let you know, if for those that are techies, is a tool called Notability, and we'll put it in if people go to speakingbusiness.tv. It's just a little app that I use on it. I use it in combination with eCam, which is the bit of software.
I've made a note because I've now got gadget envy. So anyway, we are going to, let's see if I can change the view. See, oh, there we go. I've changed the view. We've not done this before. Hey, this is interesting. This is like a TV show. So we're going to be taking a couple of weeks off. And last time we were finishing the show last week, you said to me, who's on the next show? And I didn't know. I've looked it up this time. I didn't know it was Mary. How appalling is that? So when we come back in August, we will be having Neil Malarkey helping us with improv techniques and skills. Neil Malarkey is one of the founders of the Comedy Store Players. So it should be a lot of fun. So James, what are you going to get up to? What are you going to get up to for the next 2 weeks while we're not online?
I'm working non-stop, unfortunately. I've got a speech like every single day until we meet again. But I will take a little proper holiday once the madness finishes, maybe in September. But so unfortunately, I'm getting straight back to work after this. I've got a speech to prepare.
Blimey. Mary, what are you doing for the next couple of weeks?
Well, I'm not doing what we thought we were doing because COVID has completely scuppered all our plans, but very determined to have time off. So I am not going to be working. I'm sorry, I'm not as conscientious as you guys. I am having 2 weeks off and I'm happy, but we're having a few days down in Dorset. We're having a night in a really nice hotel near here just because it's so lovely. And then we'll just take the dog for a walk, read, walk on the beach, do the garden, see some friends.
Fabulous. Well, fabulous. I'm off to Cornwall for a week with the dogs, and I'm also going with the first draft of my book. How to be more bookable and how to make more money. And Mary obviously has contributed to that. And in fact, you've contributed to it. We've used you as a case study as well, James. So I hope I like it and I don't end up using it as toilet paper. Anyway, folks, have a wonderful 2 weeks without us. Mary, thank you for giving us so much incredible value. Really brilliant. I mean, I've heard this and I heard you use it, and we've used it all the time. And I always end up making more notes. It's fabulous. Thank you. James, thank you.
Thank you. Have a great holiday. Have a great vacation.
Thank you for asking me.
You're welcome.